Hey everybody, it's Angel, and here we are ready for the very last part of Revolutionary War on Wednesday. I've enjoyed reading this book, and I hope you have too. And we've heard some pretty interesting things in the last few chapters. Now we're at chapter 9. There's only 10 chapters in this book, so we must be near the end. I wonder what's going to happen next. All right, so Jack and Annie have to get back on board the boat and go back and let George Washington and his men do the job they need to do so they can win the war for independence. So chapter 9 is titled Flash. All aboard, one of the rowers called. Jack and Annie hurried down the steep riverbank. They climbed back into the boat. The crew pushed away from the shore. The boat started back through the icy, churning waters of the Delaware River. Jack was freezing in the sleet and snow, but he didn't worry about all that now. He was thinking instead about how they had helped George Washington. He was thinking how they had helped keep history on course. Jack felt great. When they got to the riverbank, Jack and Annie jumped out of the boat. "Thanks," Jack yelled to the rowers. With the wind at their backs, Jack and Annie took off through the blizzard. They ran down the icy bank of the Delaware River. Thunder rumbled in the snowy sky, and lightning zigzagged over the woods. "How will we find the tree house?" cried Annie. "I don't know," said Jack, "but don't worry, we'll find it." He felt very confident now after meeting George Washington, after being thanked by George Washington. Whoops, having trouble turning the page. He and Annie ran through the rain and the snow and the sleet. They ran along the riverbank until a bright flash of lightning lit up the sky, and then Jack saw it. The treehouse was directly to their left, high in a tall tree covered with snow. "Over there!" he shouted. Jack and Annie ran toward the edge of the woods. In the dark, Jack looked up, searching for the treehouse. Lightning hit the woods again. Jack saw the rope ladder flapping wildly in the wind. He grabbed it. "Annie," he called. "Here," she said. "Let's go," he said. There they are, getting ready to climb up into the treehouse. They climbed up in the swaying ladder and scrambled into the treehouse. They were soaking wet and covered with slush and snow. Annie grabbed the Pennsylvania book. "I wish we could go there," she shouted. The wind blew even harder. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10, This Peaceful Place. Gray early lights spilled into the treehouse. Birds sounded in the woods. The summer wind felt warm and gentle. Jack and Annie were wearing their nice, dry clothes again. "Oh, man," said Jack. "It's good to be home." "Yeah," said Annie, sighing, "back to this peaceful place." Jack pulled the captain's letter out of his pack. He turned it over. It was addressed to Molly and Ben Sanders, Apple Tree Farm, Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. "Molly and Ben lived on a farm near these woods over 200 years ago," said Jack. Annie touched the letter. "Your dad is going to make it home, kids. He misses you," Annie whispered, as if she could send comforting thoughts and words back through time. Jack carefully placed the special writing from the Revolutionary War next to the writing from the Civil War. "Look," said Annie. She picked up a note lying in the corner. It read simply, "Come back on Tuesday." "Another message from Morgan," said Annie. Jack smiled. He pulled on his pack. "See you Tuesday, treehouse," he said. He started down the rope ladder. Annie followed. In the early daylight, they ran through the Frog Creek woods. Then they ran down their street. They climbed onto their porch and rested against the railing. They looked out at the dawn sky. Jack remembered his whoosh of the cold wind in the Delaware. And he remembered the hiss of the wet snow and the slosh of the icy waves. He remembered George Washington reading to his men. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph, Jack whispered. Those words are true, said Annie. It was a hard conflict. And I feel kind of glorious right now, don't you? Jack laughed. Yeah, definitely, he said. Then he and Annie slipped into their quiet, peaceful house. There it is. Quiet, peaceful house. Now there's a little bit of information at the back of the book about a little bit more about the time of the Revolutionary War. So I'm going to read that to you too. The 13 colonies is the first section. Long ago, the United States was made up of 13 small colonies. Many of the early settlers or colonists thought of England as their mother country. They were proud to have come from England, and they felt great loyalty to the British king. Over time, though, many colonists wanted to be independent. They did not want a faraway country to rule over them, and these colonists were called patriots. So, then came the Revolutionary War and George Washington. In the spring of 1775, fighting broke out between the Patriots and the British in Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts. That summer, a group of American patriots met in Philadelphia and began to organize an army to fight the British. They made George Washington their commander-in-chief. After the Patriots won independence over 8 years later, Washington resigned as commander-in-chief, and he returned to the life of a gentleman farmer on his plantation in Mount Vernon, Virginia. But 6 years later, in 1789, George Washington was elected the first president of the United States. And then remember, he read the words of Thomas Paine when he talked about these are the times that try men's souls. Those words were written by Thomas Paine. So here's a piece of information about him. At the beginning of the Revolutionary War, some colonists did not want to break away from England. These people were called Tories. In January 1776, a British writer named Thomas Paine wrote a powerful essay that attacked the idea of obeying a king. Paine called his essay Common Sense. It inspired many Tories to join the Patriots' cause. Almost a year later, in December 1776, George Washington's army was losing the war. Many soldiers wanted to give up. This time, Thomas Paine wrote a series of essays called The Crisis. George Washington had the crisis read aloud to his troops on the banks of the Delaware River. Paine's words inspired the troops to continue the fight. They crossed the Delaware River, defeated the enemy, and gave new hope to the whole Patriot Army. Okay, now one last question. What do you think an essay is? Well, an essay is kind of like a long paper or article. You might have to write essays someday soon for school, where it's kind of like a report where you write about it, except an essay is a little bit more about opinion, talks about facts, and then it talks a little bit about opinion and how these things that you're talking about in your essay matter to the person who is reading it. And so Thomas Paine, things that he wrote back before and during the Revolutionary War, they had great impact on the decisions that were made later in our history and what caused America to become a nation. So you never know, if you learn to read well, you learn to write well, you can have an effect on what other people think and what they believe, and get them to join your cause. So you never know. So study hard in school Learn to take notes like Jack did in the books, and read the books and let them take you interesting places, just like the books in the Magic Tree House do for Jack and Annie. All right? I hope you enjoyed Revolutionary War on Wednesday. Be sure and take your AR test on it now, and I will see you next time. Bye.